touching on the top prop bets in the NBA today. All right, guys, so looking at the board for today, it is going to be a kind of straightforward one as it sits right now. We are still waiting on some injury news to come in. And as that comes in, we should be able to make some decisions. And as I literally start this video, did see a couple of the Golden State Warriors props come in. So that could be good. Now, we do have one really kind of standout NHL bet, and that is it. They have been much better about the prop board, really the past week now. And so the best one that we're going to get is going to be Brad over 2.5 shots on goal. This is favored at minus 154 on average across the sports books, and then plus 118 for the under. So if we take out the juice with that calculation, it'd be about a 57% chance for that to hit. So, obviously with NHL, we would take the odds. That's really what we're shooting for with NHL bets, is taking the odds when they're there, because those are going to be the bets on a nightly basis that we get some pretty solid odds on. Whereas like NBA, we're just not really getting those odds. And just for what it's worth, comparing it against DraftKings Sportsbooks, we can see they have it set at minus 140. So a pretty good bet across the board there today. I'm assuming that this will be gone a few minutes after I post this video. And Underdog, and I always like to use this as another comparison as well, Underdog doesn't have this bet available as well. So probably a good sign that it's going to be a good bet, and probably going to be a good sign that it's going to be one that goes away. All right, so now getting into the prop board for today, looking at the NBA bets. We can see Bradley Beal slightly favored to get over 1.5 three balls. We could do that one. That one's fine. And then from there, nothing too crazy that we're kind of looking at in terms of over the unders. For some reason, I noticed that the data is kind of really liking DeLon Wright today, so it could be something there. Under bets, nothing too crazy. We do see Luka Doncic rebounds and assists. Could do under. PrizePicks line has it set at 15.5. That's at minus 129. And then he also is projected to get 14.5. So not a terrible one there as well. Decent edge. But what I want to call out are going to be these bets right here today. We have a lot that are kind of appealing in terms of the average sportsbook line compared to how they are projected to produce. Looking at Kawhi Leonard, you could start there. That's fine. Not the biggest edge, but I want to point out some of these ones that we do have a big edge on. For instance, Luka Doncic. And now this is kind of the tough part here, is that sportsbooks are heavily favoring the over. Okay, they have it set at basically minus 20 at 40.5. We go and look at the PrizePicks line, they have it set at 38.5. But then we look at the projection, 36.9. And so obviously one of those numbers are off, right? The projection's off. DraftKings Sportsbook is off. I would actually say in this situation, PrizePicks probably has the proper line. So maybe that's a bet that you make on DraftKings Sportsbook. And we can see DraftKings has it a little bit tighter. They have it set at 39.5. So there's definitely a discrepancy there with Luka. And it makes sense, right? Like the whole issue with Luka and Kyrie is literally they are trying to figure out how to coexist together right now. So we are seeing some sort of inconsistent play between both of them. I would say on average, Luka would get over, but they also have a difficult matchup today against Philly. So I'm actually curious, if we scroll down, let's see. Okay, so yeah, if we're just doing this projection based off of the opponent, we can see why Luka would be favored to actually get the under. Does average over it. Just a kind of a push across the board. I just found that very interesting, the discrepancies that we were getting there. And then another one that is decent, and a couple of these players, like the DeLon Wright one, the Zubac bet, probably going to be looking at him in fantasy points, and I'll get into that here at the end. We can see the line here is set at 9.5 for the over, basically a push. Minus 119, that's fine. But we are getting a full point there. Okay, so PrizePicks has it set at 8.5. He's projected to get 8.97, and we can see across the board, like far from a lock and load. Really just depends on the minutes, and his minutes have been down lately. If he were to get 30 minutes or so, like, yes, we'd be locking that in. But with Plumlee there and whatnot, like it wouldn't be shocking to see his minutes kind of continue to dwindle down. And then another one that's going to be worth calling out as well, Bradley Beal. And we can see two of them, points and rebounds, or just points. It's really just dependent on what you guys think. But this is set at 23.5, and also, about minus 118 for the over. So all these bets are going to be favoring the over here, but we also are getting like a full point with that compared to PrizePicks, which is huge. And so we can see his projected to get over. The issue that I have with all these ones is that like none of them are locks just based off of the projection. Like they are favored for the most part, but it is tight. But at the same time, if we are consistently taking advantage of, a prop that PrizePicks is undervaluing compared to the sports books, and then also use the projection as well, like that's huge. And the single fact is that all the this is a pretty good one. Minus 144 for the under to hit. That's pretty good. And so if we were to take out like the juice in that, it's not a big edge. It's like 51% favored. But use the projection with that, it's nice. But also, if this was set at 22.5, it'd probably be closer to 57 or so percent. And so I just found it interesting how many of those bets that we were getting today in terms of where PrizePicks and the sportsbooks were not matching up. I do think this could be a day in which we are going to be looking at fantasy points, though. Fantasy points have been, I don't know if it's just wrapping my head around it easier or whatnot. It just seems to be easier to predict. And even like the last two nights, Naismith and it was Quentin Grimes were the two best in terms of fantasy points. And it's ugly, but they both got the over. So there does seem to be a slight edge there. Now, the first one we have here is going to be OG Anunoby. I kind of butchered that a little bit there with the name. But, this is definitely a matchup thing as well. But 25.5 for fantasy points is a decent number that we are getting. So we can see on the season, he averages about 30.3 PrizePicks points, which is pretty solid. Prop line based off of the opponents per minute production given up would still be over. So as long as he gets 34 minutes or so based off of the opponent, he should be able to get over. Projected to get 28.76. A decent prop there. Personally, I would say it's not a lock and load, especially with Joachim Poeltl still there. I feel comfortable. I shouldn't say comfortable. Like eventually Joachim Poeltl is going to miss, right? It's just eventually it's going to happen. But he is still too cheap in terms of really all the props, but he has been really just checking all the boxes in terms of stats, getting it done steals, getting it done rebounds, getting it done assists, getting it done points, getting it done blocks. So it kind of makes sense to chase the fantasy point or the fantasy score. And I honestly don't get this number. I would almost assume that as the day progresses, they're going to switch away from that. And so on the previous live stream that I did on Taco Tuesday, a lot of people were saying, well, what if he doesn't start? I'm like, if he doesn't start, I would almost like that a little bit more because then he's going against the second unit. And as long as the minutes are still there, heck, his usage could go up even more, right? And so last game against Chicago, only 3 rebounds. Against Washington tonight, I don't see him struggling to be productive in the rebound department. Now, I do want to point this out. He got the over fantasy point wise because 3 steals and 2 blocks. That's like 15 points right there. That's not going to happen again. But also, don't expect him to only have 3 rebounds again. So to me, this is kind of, I'm fine riding the hot hand. I'm fine taking the 2 cheap fantasy points. Eventually, it's going to miss. And, when it does, we'll be up on this bet since he's really joined Toronto. This would be the 4th, I think, straight slate in which we cash with Joachim Poeltl. And again, if we look at the matchup, like strong matchup, just overall solid production. And if we look at his average based off of his projected minutes, should be able to get there as well. Just across the board, slightly too low. So Zubac as well. Looking at it, guys, it's definitely tight, but there is a slight edge there. Going against Looney defense, I'm not too worried about that. And so another one I want to call out is going to be DeLon Wright, another one that kind of looks tight on paper, but he is projected to get some more run tonight. And so if we look at DeLon Wright, we see why it is. Monte Morris is going to be out. And so if we pull up DeLon Wright, you got 31 minutes, 29 minutes. He's been getting some more run. And so to me, already this one seems like a very cheap projection for him for 23 fantasy points. Now, the worry that you might have is going to be the matchup with Toronto. I get that. But if we pull up his per 36 numbers, which once again, we see that he's not projected to get 36 minutes, it's going to be 31 minutes. So slightly off here, but his per 36 production is 34 fantasy points per 36 with Monte Morris off the court. Gets 4th most minutes out of anyone on the team. So a pretty decent one. I think I'd rather go like Denny if that one is going to be available eventually throughout the day. But also he's someone that's not available, right? Yeah, no. That's someone with Porzingis playing most likely that I don't think we need to make. And for what it's worth, I do feel like they are still undervaluing Kevon Looney a decent amount. Like Wiggins is still out, Curry's still out. Now Draymond Green's going to be active tonight, but he's been highly productive with all those players out, really just been crushing over points, crushing over rebounds. And this is a situation in which we could potentially just do points and rebounds. So like last game, we can see only had 7 rebounds. That was his worst rebounding night in a while. Prior to that, he'd been crushing. But if we add on his points to this, he has 21. So it could be tight, but at the same time, it is looking like a favorable prop that we are getting. In last game against Portland, it was a blowout. He only played 23 minutes, and he was still able to get the over there. Now, we look at the last game against the Clippers, 11-14. Now, Plumlee wasn't there, but, how much does that change things? And for what it's worth, we know we've been attacking Charlotte bigs against, we've been using bigs against Charlotte. And then for what it's worth, last time out against Charlotte, 11 points, 9 rebounds. So I think that's going to be probably the best one we can go with. Now, you could do points, rebounds, and assists as well. Like this number is pretty appealing as well. You add on maybe 2 assists, and that's just another safety blanket. So I'm actually, based off of this, I'm very curious as to what his fantasy point projection is going to be. If it's like 25 or so, I think we can get away with that. I think that'd be a good one. If he can can get maybe a block or something, that'd be huge. And that'd be if you think he's going to get a block, that'd be the reason why you'd want to do fantasy points. Now, I'm kind of curious. We need to go ahead and check out all the lines for these games. Which games are maybe potentially going to be blowouts, because that obviously matters. For what it's worth, Toronto and Washington, not expected to be a blowout. So that could be a game in which we are chasing some of those fantasy point ones with Joachim Poeltl, maybe OG, and then DeLon Wright. I'm perfectly fine with those three. Looking at Philly versus Dallas, another decent one. And this is a pretty high over and under, especially for a Philly game. So I don't mind that. Okay. All these games are actually projected to stay close. So this game against the Pacers could be a great spot. Could be. And I'm actually hoping that we get a Jordan Nwora prop if Tyrese Halliburton is out. He's actually currently expected to play. But 238 over and under for this game. The Spurs are all banged up, so it'll be very interesting to see who gets minutes in that game. But this could be a situation, and let's see if we have any of them out yet. We don't. I was hoping maybe Miles Turner or something. Aaron Naismith, there he is. Oh, we do. Miles Turner. Let's see. He'd be someone against the Spurs I'd be fine with using, and maybe we go back to it fantasy point wise. I do plan on doing a video later tonight. Once again, I don't really control when I do those videos. It's more or less the board will dictate that. If it's worthwhile to come out with a video, I'll do that. But it kind of seems like based off of the amount of injury news we have, it will be worthwhile. So I think that'll be around 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, maybe 3 in between that. And it's always crazy how the board like populates throughout this video. And then that last game, like we don't really have to worry about a blowout there as well. So in theory, a lot of these bets should be safe. They should be avoiding the blowout risk. And so for what it's worth, like really the only under bets that we have would be for fantasy points would be like Clay, but also Clay is just shoot to get hot. If he gets hot, he's going to crush. So I don't want to do that one. So here we go. Here are going to be today's bets as it sits right now. I don't feel like any of these are locks. Like I'm always going to chase the good odds that we're getting with the NHL bet. More times than not, that's going to hit. If you guys have any questions about kind of that strategy, I do have the strategy, how to attack PrizePicks and Underdog video in the link in the description below. Check that out, especially if you are someone that's maybe struggling as well, maybe bankroll management and whatnot. It's just a good resource, I think. And then as it sits right now, this can change throughout the day, but these are going to be the top props. Obviously, DeLon Wright is going to be a decent one with Monte Morris off the court. We do see his per 36 numbers suggest that he should be able to crush this fantasy score. So just need him not to have a terrible night against that Toronto defense. Joachim Poeltl, as long as the minutes are there, he's been getting around 30 to 26 minutes with the Raptors. As long as those minutes are there against Washington, he should be productive. Now, in his previous game, he only had 3 rebounds. We need more rebounds than that because the 15 points that he got from blocks and steals most likely not going to happen again tonight. But at the same time, he is someone that is just productive in multiple ways. 30 fantasy points seems cheap for how productive he has been since he's joined the Raptors. Eventually, it's going to miss. And we'll take it. We'll take that on the chin. It's fine because he's rewarded us a bunch already. And then here as well, 23 fantasy points going against Golden State. A pretty decent prop that we are getting there. And then also, I could easily add in Kevon Looney, and I would suggest that. Points, rebounds, and assists, Kevon Looney adding on to this one as well. I think that's going to be a good prop for you guys to chase. But yeah, once again, like they are pretty solid bets. It seems like I would say none of these are really just like strong bets like we had like 2 nights ago. And thankfully, Taco Tuesday, we did have, some really kind of strong bets. I would say these are all good enough, though. I feel comfortable kind of giving it out in the today's bet section. Like yesterday, Mark Williams ended up getting over, but I didn't give a today's bet section because I just didn't feel like there was a good board, really. And Mark Williams was the best one. He got the over fantasy points by like 2, and it was a sweat up until the end. And so that could have very well went the other way. Like, it's great that it didn't, but there are some slates in which you can tell the comfortability level for yourself. And that's why I'm a little bit more comfortable than last night, but at the same time, not as comfortable as 2 nights ago. Okay, so take that for what it's worth. All right, thanks for watching. Let's have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.